Welcome back, everybody, to Neutrality Studies. Today, for the first time, with Dr. Patrick Ringgenberg, a lecturer at the EPFL in Lausanne, the Swiss equivalent to the MIT, where he teaches and researches Iran. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you very much for doing this. I wanted to talk to you because you wrote and expressed that you're quite unhappy with the way that Iran is being portrayed, also in Europe, in the media. And you've been researching Iran for a long, long time, and now we are in the second month of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. And I just wanted to pick your brain of how you see what is currently happening, looking at this from distant Switzerland.
Well, actually, there's much to say. I think that first, it was a big mistake to start this war because, on a personal level, I never thought that Iran would be attacked. Because when you're aware of what Iran is, its history, its culture, its military expertise and strength, you realize that no, you cannot win a war against Iran. And I've been visiting Iran, even living part of the year in Iran for now 25 years. So since 2000, and more precisely since 2002, really every year there were some articles about plans of military operations against Iran, special operations, bombing or nuclear site or sabotage, and it was never a question of a grand invasion. But during years and years, there were plans for attacking Iran. But I never thought it was really serious, in the sense that once again, given the details about Iran, it's not absolutely not possible to achieve any goal there. So history is very creative. So we see exactly I would like to say, the alignment of planets that permitted the illusion that Iran was weak, could be attacked, could be submitted. And but we see that the analyzers, and I'm not the only one to say that, the analyzer that was saying, even predicting a few months ago, that it would be a quagmire and a trap for the US, is just happening under our eyes. And concerning the vision of Iran, yeah, it's my first the first time I was in Iran, it was in 2000. And one big surprise is to discover a country which is totally different from the image or the representation we may have in the West, but really totally different. I don't mean that Iran is a perfect country, everything is well. No, not at all. But it's totally different from this kind of cliche Orientalist based vision of a country of fundamentalism, theocracy, with a kind of close culture. And no, it's a very, first of all, it's a very big country with a long history, sociology, which is very diverse and complex. And the life in Iran is totally different than what we can imagine and what I hear from it here in Europe in general. So
Can
I very
can
sorry.
you give us a few examples? Like, how is it different? Like, what's actual versus the way it is being portrayed? Just like 3, 4 examples.
Yeah, from the West, you have the impression that it's a total dictatorship and a religious dictatorship. And when you live with the Iranians, you realize that they're free to move, they're free to gather, they have their own life, and that the idea that it's a kind of a government which controls everything and everything is religious, that's something that it's not correct at all. Now, you have to understand that Iran is, again, a very complex country. So you have harsh contrast, for instance, between northern Tehran with I would say, a cosmopolitan, very westernized, even Americanized culture, and some regions like the Sistan Baluchistan, very traditional, and even some other planet. And between the big cities, the villages, between north, south, east, west, you have a great deal of variety, and you cannot just reduce Iran to some people westernized in some big cities. So the problem with the vision of Iran we have is that it's much modeled, determined by a diaspora in the West, which is, of course, liberal, westernized, and which has a kind of sometimes neo-Orientalist vision on their own country. And they know the country only in a very partial way. I mean, they don't go to places outside big cities, or they don't meet with people in Iran, which is actually the majority, which are much more traditional or religious. And we have this idea that the government of Iran is totally detached from the majority of the people, which is actually not the case. And but the main point, I think, is that we like to acknowledge that, yeah, Iran is complex, long history, etc. But in fact, we always want to see the mullah regime and religion everywhere, and that's not the case. And even the Iranian Islam, or the ways Iranian practices Islam, it's something which is totally different from what we can see in other Muslim countries. And for instance, the Iranian Islam first is Shia, so it's different than the Sunni Islam. And it's not only Shia, because there is a long tradition of mystical Persian poetry in Iran, which had much influence on the people, because poetry is something that you can meet in everyday life. And through the poetry, you have a lot of mystical thoughts, Sufism, and this is also something which mixed with the Shia Islam in Iran. And there's, I know some religious people. I know many people who are not practicing Islam, but are very interested in mystical thoughts. And so you have a great variety of I would like to say spiritual uh, ways of thinking and position. It's has nothing to do with the ideological or state Islam that we think in the West determines everything. No, it's not the case. And but to realize that, you have really to be in Iran. And one striking thing, and when I hear the analysts, commentators, they are totally disconnected from the realities, the ground realities of Iran, I would like to say. They see Iran with a telescope from very far. And with some reports, they read books, but they cannot just imagine how life really is inside Iran.
Hey, very brief intermission because I was recently banned from YouTube, and although I'm back, this can happen anytime again. So please consider subscribing not only here, but to my mailing list on Substack. That's pascalotta.substack.com. The link's going to be in the description below, and now back to the video. That's it's a very Western thing to do, right? To then project our views on what another
Yeah.
society is and act based upon our impressions about them instead of actually. I mean, it's not as if we didn't study. It's not as if you were not a lecturer at a very important institution, university in Switzerland, but it doesn't seep through, right? Also into public discourse. But let me just ask one thing, because uh, I had this surprise about 2 months ago, shortly before the war started. I coincidentally had a dinner with two Iranian friends, a couple, and they're from the north, from Tabriz, from the Azeri part, and they brought me a beautiful bottle of wine from as actually from Azerbaijan, not from Iran, but same ethnicity, right? That and they said like, look, this kind of wine we also make, of course, at home around Tabriz. And I was like, oh wow, I'm surprised because isn't it an Islamic country? Are you allowed to make wine? And he looked at me and said like, look, Pascal, wine in Iran is much older than our relatively young religion. And I was like, oh yeah, right. There's other things that actually that define Iran and than just the religion. And of course the 1,600, 400, 1,500 years of Islam are not all defining when it comes to Iran. Is that big so?
Yeah, exactly. And concerning wine, it's very interesting because the tradition drinking wine goes back to antiquity in Iran. And when Islam came, it didn't disappear. Of course, majority of the people stopped drinking wine, but in the aristocracies, in some mystical circles, in literary circles, they continue to drink wine, and nowadays it's absolutely the case. And I mean, it's maybe my Muslim friends in Iran will forgive me to say that, but as a Swiss, I started really drinking alcohol in Iran because I was invited in parties where everybody was drinking something, vodka, wine, and I was the only European not to drink. So it was quite weird to me. So I, little by little, very responsibly, I have to say, I started to drink. But not all the families like that. I mean, I also know many people who don't drink or really a religious practice. So you can find everything in Iran, and it is this diversity that really we don't understand from the West. And once again, when you just only read books or articles about Iran, it's not enough to give you the sense of the organic life in the country. And yes, wine is everywhere. You can people are making wine themselves, so it's not always a great success. Matter of taste maybe, but alcohol comes from Iraq mainly, and you have some whiskeys, and I know people who have a collection of whiskey, which is just incredible. So no, it's and of course it's something which is underground, it's hidden, it's private, but we realize in Iran that in privacy everything is possible almost.
According to my friend who's an anthropologist, he says like even winemaking is still possible, also if it's not too hidden. But I don't know how much that's the case. But just the observation that the very famous Shiraz grape
Hmm.
actually
Yeah,
named after the city Shiraz in Iran.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The very note of itself was a revelation, and it's like okay, and life is much more diverse, of course, than you think. But you said at the beginning that you didn't think that the United States and Israel could be that foolish to do this because all of the factors speak against success of a military operation. What are the factors that you're thinking about that made you believe that they wouldn't actually go through with this constant saber rattling?
Well, you just have to look the Iranian strategy. They have a multiple strategy, military, economic. So they're using the central geographic position to harm the world economy, to harm the neighboring countries that are helping Americans to bomb Iran. And the Iran is not too far from Israel, at least for the ballistic missiles. And I think that I was in Tehran during the 12 days war. So um they were bombing Tehran day and night, and but at the very end, Iranians were still continuing to fire missiles towards Israel. And eventually Israel asked for a ceasefire. So it means that all the speculations about the number of missiles that Iran may have, it's just maybe not the point, because obviously Iran has the military infrastructure all around the country that allows to retaliate during months and months. And because they are really the heart of the Middle East, they can have an impact on the regional economy, on the world economy, and all these data, all these factors were very well known, because the shutdown down of the Strait of Hormuz is something that is evoked for years and years. If Iran is attacked, it can retaliate on the Strait of Hormuz. So it's not nothing new. And when you gather all these factors, you say, no, it's just not possible to really to attack Iran without big losses and without a clear goal to be achieved. And once again, when you know a little bit Iran, is it's absolutely obvious that Iran is too big to fall, too big to fail, and you cannot take it simply. And we think, I mean, in the media, as you can read that, yeah, maybe we can overthrow the government because or we can win over Iran because they have a kind of phantasmatic or kind of delusional vision of the country. They think that it's weak, that the population is backwards, that it's a kind of exotic tribe, so you just kill the leader and everything collapse. Not at all. And when you know Iran even a little bit, even as a tourist, 2 weeks, 3 weeks there, you can understand like the size of the country, the the mental strength of the people, the nationalism, and without being a military expert, I know that Iranian army is quite strong, has multiple expertise coming back from Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, and even it's rooted in a military tradition that is very old. So when you gather all these factors, you say no, it's just a foolish idea. So if this foolish idea came to reality, to a war, it's because most analysts live in a bubble and just didn't analyze Iran as it is, but just created a projective image of Iran corresponding to the desire. But the reality is very, always tracks back. So once again, I think that it's a Iran is a very interesting case study for me. How you build a vision, a representation of a country, which has almost nothing to do with the many realities of the country. This is something uh, fundamental, because if you have a wrong conception of something, of course, every initiative you take will
Yep.
fail.
In another talk I once called this the Western Don Quixote approach of of imagining that this thing in front of you is a giant and then you charge toward it, but even if you see the giant very clearly, if it's just a windmill, then you have a problem. And you're gonna
Yeah.
hurt yourself. And I think, I mean, so this is another instance where then the United States is fighting something that is different from what even their analysis says it is. So that's, I think that's the criticism, right?
Yeah, and I think the issue is that Donald Trump is ignorant of the region. Maybe he's living in a bubble, and the information he receives comes from his inner circle, which basically works for Israel. So I'm also surprised how much Israel doesn't understand that it really cannot win a war against Iran. So the problem is the US is into a trap, fell into a trap with American soldiers who are playing the role of mercenaries for another country, Israel, without any clear goal, without any plan, without any way out. And now we see that it's absolutely impossible again to win over a country which goes back to antiquity, which has a cultural, military, national solidity that we always underestimated in the West. And because we think that Iran is complex, there is a divide between the government and the people, which is true to a certain extent. We think that, well, everything is like a house of cards and it's fun like that. No, once again, it's a bias, and it's an Orientalist bias. But I'm surprised that United States, which has many professors or faculty members, universities studying Iran or Israel, country in the region, could not understand that. So once again, it's a problem of knowledge and how is it possible that the people competent to understand a country have no power of decision or have no influence of on the decision making? I think this is a big lesson for every level of decision making and every level of I would like to say uh, uh, academic approach or to a country, because obviously there is a failure at every level.
You're in Switzerland. Like how did it go there? I mean, in terms of media attention, since you are an Iran expert and you're from the French speaking part, did the French speaking media in Switzerland flock to interview you in order to understand what is happening? And the Swiss government has been, to my surprise, positive surprise, quite being quite critical. And the foreign ministry actually put out statements saying that they do not condone, that they think it is bad that the United States and Israel attacked Iran. They put out such tweets, which surprised me. They tend to be less outspoken. But how was the experience for you as an Iran expert in the West, in Switzerland, now that this war was wrought upon Iran? Did you get a lot of attention?
No, not at all. Not at all. I can understand in a very provocative way. Uh, uh, the media, not only in Switzerland, I see in France, for instance, the experts invited or the analysts invited are people who have a very strong oriented, even ideological perception of Iran, or there are people from the diaspora or clearly opponents to the Islamic Republic. So the idea is really to create a negative, dark image of Iran. So really, sometimes an impression that they're just in the line with a war propaganda. And it would be a wonderful study to do after the war. I mean, to study the different ways that media's talked about the conflict. So someone like me who knows Iran, who has been living in Iran part of the year for years and years, who know the society, the political dynamics, they're not interested in someone like me, in as much as I would propose a much more nuanced and complex representation of the country. So no, I'm never invited. And the people invited usually are from the diaspora, which is more or less disconnected from the country, and or analysts who have once again a very oriented vision of Iran. And when immediately they talk about the Iranian regime, the Islamic regime, the regime change, that they are in a very precise paradigm. And I mean, it's not even possible, I mean, to counter this kind of massive arguments, because they have a framework, and they put all Iran in this framework, and it's more ideological than anything else. So after that, you can take a lot of time to explain. No, maybe it's more complex than that. You have to explain the history we run. You have to develop a bit, and of course, the medias, they don't have the time, and sometimes they don't want to because it's something. I'm I had experience of this construction of the image of Iran from the beginning of 2000 and even before. I mean, but since 2000 that I'm really studying on the ground. And what was very surprising to me, it was around 2015, 2016, because they had signed a GCPOA in 2015. And before that, when you had magazines or books on Iran, very often you had some presentation of Iran as a kind of Islamic fascist country with images related to a nuclear weapon, and of course, Iran was considered as a threat, and they wanted to have the bomb, and after that they could bomb Israel or other countries. But when they signed the GCPOA, suddenly, almost overnight, everything changed in the media. Suddenly, on the cover magazine, you could see beautiful ladies with a scarf, young ladies, and with some titles like Iran is back, a big civilization, and so on. And once Donald Trump left the DCPOA, again, we went back to the nuclear mushroom, the nuclear symbol, and the threat posed by Iran. So I really understood how easy it's to build or to imprison a country into a negative image. And when there are some economic interests, then when there's a possibilities to make business with Iran, suddenly you can change this image once again overnight. And that instead of talking about the mullahs, the nuclear bomb, the Islamic theocracy, or you have beautiful ladies, the many potentials of Iranian economy. So it's a media game, but nowadays, the problem is that really there are most of the media, and I don't pretend that I will see everything, but most of the media, at least the mainstream media, and in Switzerland as well as in France, they are just following a kind of war propaganda, worst case scenario, or at least they are just repeating what we have heard for decades about the mullah regime, the religious oppression, and so on.
It is quite fascinating, isn't it? Because like we are both Swiss. I mean, I wouldn't think that Switzerland has a guided press that they are somehow like centrally controlled guidelines coming down. Not at all. I mean, it's a quite free liberal country where the press can more or less write whatever they want. But for one reason or another, this epistemic bubble that we created in Western countries then leads these different media outlets to report in only one way and then repeat certain key phrases. Regime is one for Iran, mullah is the other one. Can you explain this one to me, by the way? I never understood why it is called a mullah regime because I don't. I mean, I know about the Ayatollah. I know about the government structure, including the power of the IRGC and different branches of government. But the mullah, can you explain that to me?
Yeah, Mola is it's a cleric, a Shia cleric. So and it's someone who studies Islamic tradition, law, jurisprudence, philosophy for years and years, and even decades. And they receive some certificate of competence. So Ayatollah is one of the highest rank, but you have also Ayatollah Islam, and Mullah is the common title for the carry. So you have to understand that the Mullah. These are the backbone of the Shia community, and not only nowadays, for centuries. Because Shia, if you we just evoke a bit of history. She is an Islamic division born after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. There was a debate among the Muslims after the death of the Prophet, who we be at the head of the young Muslim community. And for the Shia, there was only one person who could be the real heir of the Prophet. It was Ali, who had married the daughter of Muhammad, Fatima. But the majority of the Muslims, they didn't agree. They chose Abu Bakr, who became the first of the four Sunni caliphs. So the Shia decided that, or in their opinion, Ali was the real heir, spiritual heir of the Prophet. So Ali is not, for the Shia, the fourth of the four caliphs, is the first of the Imam. And Ali and Fatima had two sons, Hassan and Hussein. Hussein, who became martyred in Karbala in 680. And then from father to son, you have 12 imams, at least for the Shia in Iran. And the 12th imam disappeared mysteriously in the 10th century. And he's supposed to come back in the end of times. It's one of the very important aspect of the metaphysics of history of eschatology of the 12th Shia. So this, after the 12th Imam disappeared, the question was what to do, because there is no guidance, and little by little the clerics, what we call the mullahs, became more and more important, because in the absence of a great Imam, they were the responsible for the interpretation of the Islamic heritage, for the Quran, for the Hadith, for the all the traditions of the Imam, and little by little along the centuries, they became really the bedrock of the Shia community. And what changed in 16th century, Iran became Shia, it became a Shia kingdom. And from this period onward, there's a royal power, which is really connected, sometimes intertwined with a hierarchy of uh, clerics who are responsible for the interpretation of the Shia tradition, the Islamic tradition, and the modernity of the Islamic Republic. Is we have this principle of religious guidance inside, embodied in a republican system. But first, you have to say that not all the members of government are mullahs. Not at all. I mean, you can find mullahs in many different institutions. That's certain, but mainly, I mean, in the political process and political decisions, there are, I mean, secular people. And the other thing is that the presence of religion in the state is once again something very old. It's not something new. So it's part of the culture, even part of the nationalism of Iran. So saying that it's a mullah regime, it's really not to understand that the complexity of Iranian state. It's not only a state nation as we know it, more or less, uh, and coming back from a 19th century European model. It's a republic. It's also a religious country, and it's also a country which is the heir of empires, because the first really universal empire is the Achaemenid Empire, 6th century before Christ, and from this period onward, Iranians used to rule, to administrate empires or big kingdoms. So there's also something of this imperial traditions in the present day Islamic Republic of Iran. So just to say it's a mullah regime, it makes no sense, and it's just a way to project onto Iran a kind of secularist, anti-religious or anti-Islamic prejudice.
It just shows that the people who use that phrase or these two words just don't have an idea how Iran actually works as a political entity. The Can you tell me though, like this, the religious part? We know that there are Jews living in Iran. We know that there are other religious denominations in Iran. How is that working? And maybe so my friend, he very much kind of disputes the legitimacy even of the idea of ethnicity, but the different groups that together make up the Iranians, the more Iranians today. How is that mix working? Because it seems that one of the misunderstandings of the West is that as soon as you drop a couple of bombs, then the individual suppressed minorities will rise up and throw out the regime, and they will either build a new Western utopia in Tehran, or they will break up into little constituencies and then do their own thing because everybody just wants to be free from the yoke of central suppression.
Well, you have some religious minorities in Iran. Some are very old. Yes, you have Jews. Not many. I think less than 10,000 Jews in Iran nowadays. But I don't have the exact figure. And you have also different forms of Christianity. You have Armenian, largest Christian community. You have Nestorians, or what you call Assyrians. You have Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism was the religion Iranians had before Islam. And with the arrival of Islam, many Zoroastrians converted into Islam, or they went to other countries like India. But still nowadays, even if it's a really small minority now, you have Zoroastrians. So these are communities that they're fully integrated within the state. And because it's an Islamic republic, the idea is that it's an Islamic idea that the 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 non-Muslim communities that Islam recognizes can live without any problem within a Muslim society. They cannot preach their faith or to try to convert other people, but they are free to practice the rituals. They have the temples or churches or synagogues. They can follow their own custom. For instance, to have alcohol, because Zoroastrians or Christians, of course, they can alcohol, and of course, with the Islamic Revolution, there was a certain pressure on these non-Muslim communities. But nowadays, you can meet many Zoroastrians or Christians, Christians that feel that they are Iranians, like Muslim Iranians, and that are also nationalists, and that they feel that it's not. When the US and Israel attack Iran, they are attacking their country, not a country that whose government they want to overthrow. No, not at all. So and these non-Muslim communities, they are very old. Zoroastrians, they are in Iran for thousands of years, literally speaking. So are Jews. Unfortunately, after the Islamic Revolution, many Jews went to immigrated to Israel, but Armenians, they are here for centuries, and so they are really part of the country, of the culture of the country, and there are many. Friendships between Armenians and Zoroastrians and Muslims on the everyday life. The religious question is not on the table, because at certain point, the everyday culture doesn't pertain to religion. It's an art of living, it's the food, it's the sociability, it's all these kind of things, which may, of course, have a religious dimension. But no, it's you know when you talk with people, you realize that they feel Iranians because even if they are not Muslim, they feel that the history of Iran is also their history.
What is your assessment about the political situation inside, the higher echelons of power in Tehran? My friend and colleague Heinz Gärtner, an emeritus professor at the University of Vienna, he kept pointing out to me a couple of years ago, look, there are serious disagreements of how to conduct foreign policy. And one of the examples he brought is that whenever the foreign ministry of Iran tends to get closer to successes in its diplomacy with the West, what would frequently happen is that the Ministry of Justice, which is run by much more hardliners, would just execute human rights activists, which then would create a storm of news in Europe and the United States, and then kind of sabotage some of the diplomatic efforts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So, do you have any kind of do you have observations about the different factions and the different types of, like, let's say, people in Iran and their conception of how the country should run its foreign policy with the future that you can share with us?
Yes. First of all, yes, there are huge divisions among the, the power in Iran. I mean, it's something that been well studied, and it's not a mystery. It goes back to the Islamic Revolution, because the Islamic Revolution created a divide between. It's very schematic, but let's put it that way. Between the revolutionaries who wanted really to pursue an anti-imperialist, anti-Western policy, and what we call so they say the hardliners, and other people who were more pragmatic, more realistic, thinking that okay, there was a revolutions, but after a few years we have to go back to normal diplomatic relationships. So we have to normalize our relations with European countries or the West. And that's how you can find this political position on the reformist or the pragmatist or the realist, whatever the name. So there are two strong position, and of course there are in the middle all the possibilities. I mean, some people are, and this is also the complexity of the politics in Iran. You may have a conservative, you think that it's a hardliner, but who is aware enough that we have to be realistic for the international relations. So and you have also some reformists that from some reason are very strict also on the normalizations with the West. So you have all the kinds of interpretations of some fundamentals of Iranian politics. So nowadays, what changes everything is the war, because during the Iran-Iraq war, um, the first priority was to defend the country, the homeland, and to put aside the political divisions. And first we defend the country, and then we talk about politics. And nowadays, I think it's exactly more or less the same. The put aside the divisions, the tensions between the different fractions, and sometimes very violent oppositions, because the priority is to unite against the aggression. And after the war, of course, all these divisions, all these issues will come back, because we'll find again a strong position between the people who want really to make a complete shift towards the east, with China, Russia, and not to deal anymore with the West, or with a very, very limited impact. And some realistic, maybe analysts that will say that no, we have anyway to normalize the relations with all the countries in the world, including the West. So for the moment, I think the divisions and the internal oppositions inside the government are just silent because, once again, we are in a state of emergency, and the first thing is to finish the war on best terms possible. And after that, of course, there will be hot debates in the power. Say, okay, what can we do now? But it will be all depend on the how the war ends, and what Iran will get with an agreement. And But yeah, anyway, you have to think that behind the idea, maybe the concept that there is a kind of homogeneity of thinking inside the Islamic Republic, because everybody is obliged to accept the system. There are really uh, uh, strong divisions, hot debates, and each time I had political discussion, I had many in Iran. I mean, it's really you cannot imagine. I mean, they talk about that in very free ways. There's no taboo. It's something that they know that the country is divided on the political level. So it will depend on the end of the war, on the policy of the new supreme leader, on the political forces that we can find uh, after the war. And of course, there are many parameters we don't know now.
Is should we understand the role of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, the new Ayatollah
Mhm.
Khamenei now, the his father before? Should we understand that role more like the supreme leader in, let's say, North Korea, where we have to imagine a dictator who rules with iron fist, or should we more understand him as a kind of a balancer in chief that who has to play with the different factions that are all relevant toward political power, including, well, I mean, we know that there are all of these factions. So what is his role within the practical role within the system?
Well, the supreme leader has have many functions. The idea is to have a religious guidance at the top of the state, because it's once again a very old Shia tradition. Even though the very system of the Islamic Republic is very modern, even modernist. But the idea is that to have a religious guidance that the country follows Islamic principles in its politics and in the society. Now, this is the theory, but in practice, it's much more complex. And what we see when you observe in politics sometimes nothing to do with religion, because it's one kind of political realism, or imperial traditions, or politics that any state nation would follow. And it's not because a cleric, the supreme leader, says something, or recommend to do this or that, that it's religious in its basis. Sometimes what he says is just political stuff in a very basic sense of term. It has nothing to do really with religions in the very strict of term. So the supreme leader, as you said, is the top of the state. He's kind of playing the role of a kind of a balance of power between different factions. Is a symbol of unity. He's morally responsible for the Islamic orientation, or at least in parents of the country. And he represents what we can call the deep state. I mean, the awareness that, really fundamentally speaking, Iran, yes, it has a republican dimension, but its root in history, and the history is at the same time a sense of religion and a sense of empire. And because all the empires of Iran were really deeply connected to a sacred dimension. It once again goes back to the antiquity. So the deep state, in the case of Iran, is the conscious that religion is one of the fundamental identity axis of the country, and that there is also an imperial axis that really is rooted in history, and the deep state is fundamentally that, and the supreme leader represent also this kind of deep state. So he has a function which is really multiple. Now, what will Mojtaba Khamenei will do? I don't know, because before the war, uh, when I had some political discussions with people in Iran, were knowing the system, inside the system, the function, the very function of a supreme leader were questioned. Do we keep it? Do we transform it into something which is less political and more, I would say, religious, moral? Or did we change, do we transform this function of supreme into something which looks like a council with several people and not only one person at the top? So there were this kind of debates. It was only There were only debates, but it showed that the choice of Mustafa Khamenei was done in a very specific context, a context of war, of emergency, and because he was next to his father, his um, cleric, so he knows the Islamic jurisprudence with a sufficient level of competence. He's of course has been trained by his father and political uh, and political work. So obviously they wanted to create a kind of continuity of allegiance, of doctrines, of the unity of the country would be preserved in the very circumstances where we are. But after the war, no one knows, because of course, Mustafa Khamenei is another generation simply, and he's well aware that the country has changed for now 4 decades, that the policy of his father will certainly not be his policy, even if it's in tracks of his father. So there are much more question than answer at this point. But one thing is that despite the divisions, the internal oppositions, and very strong ones within the Iranian system, it's a solid system, because Iranians, they know when we can fight against each other within the republic system, and when they have to make the unity against a common threat against the country.
I find this fascinating. Okay, on the one hand, certainly the administrative capacities that go back 2000, at least 2,600 years to administer a country that size. On the other hand, I find it really interesting that you're framing his role as being basically the head of the deep state. I just had a discussion with Aaron Good, who also says, like, in the United States, to think that the political system of the United States is just the Senate and the White House and so on is stupid. Of course, the political realities in the United States works a part and parcel with all of the forces that are not directly part of the constitutional order, but it's part and parcel of how the United States as a political system works. So if you're framing the Ayatollah as just being the visible head of another part of the state, that's quite valuable, I think, to think of, to figure out how political structures work. But maybe, we have about 5 minutes left, and I just would like to ask you, is there something I didn't ask you, or something that's on your mind that you think is important that could be added to the discussion we already had, for people to understand something that you think is important about Iran or about the war that's now unfolding?
Uh, well, potentially there are many things to say, uh, but uh, maybe to stress on the fact that once again, uh, the representation we have of Iran in the media in Europe, it's something weird, and that's really totally misleading. And once again, not because Iran is a country, a perfect country with a kind of harmony and a kind of paradise. No, not at all. And as a researcher, my the, my purpose, my goals is to have the most complete, accurate, relevant, I would say neutral vision of the many realities, sometimes contradictory, of a country. But what I hear, what I read in the medias is always bias of interpretation that want Iran to be this or that. And of course I know the diaspora a bit in the West, and of course they have some trajectory of life that are very common. They are economic immigrants, or they were opponents to the Islamic Republic, and of course they took refuge here in the West, in the US, in Europe, and of course they have a discourse of opposition, and that you can fully understand that. And I don't have to judge anything. Simply, I have to say again that it's one voice, but there are many other voices in Iran. And as a historian, as an anthropologist, I cannot just take into account one voice and to say, okay, Iran is that in the framework or in the window of this Iranian life of the diaspora. And once again, the problem is the lack of understanding and simply the lack of contact with Iran as it is, the living Iran. And what is very interesting to me is many people who are debating about Iran, television and medias, they talk about Iran without Iran, as if, I mean, they decide, okay, in the new Iran, the diaspora will do that and this. Okay, I can understand that these people have ideas, and they think that when they can come back to Iran, remove the government, and do create a kind of secular, liberal type of government in Iran. Why not? But it's just theory. And what about the more than 90 million people living in Iran? What do they think? What do they know about them? Almost nothing, because they just think that Iranians should think like they think in a liberal, secular, Western way. There are people like that in Iran. There are many people very critical of the Islamic Republic. But once again, the diaspora and the analysts we can hear and read in the West, they are totally disconnected with the majority of Iranians who think otherwise. And this is why the Iran they talk about is not an existing Iran. It's just a projective, ideal, theoretical, Orientalist Iran. But it's not the Iran that I think any tourist in Iran, even 10 days, 2 weeks, could discover.
Then let's hope that we're as soon as possible, able again to go and do tourism to Iran, and then encourage everybody to go and see it for yourself, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the kind of stereotypes that we in the West operate on is grotesque, while thinking that we're the enlightened part of human civilization, right? It's anyhow, we've got to we've got to leave it at this. For everybody who's interested in your work, Patrick, you have a homepage on which you gather some of your materials. That is Patrick Ringgenberg .com.
Yeah, that's it. patrickringan.com. And I have also a few articles and also books published on academia.edu. And yeah, that's it.
And you told me you have about 10 books out on Iran, right?
Yeah, or maybe more. After 10, I don't count anymore. So yeah, and yeah.
If you want to read from a very modest researcher who stopped counting his books, go and find books of Patrick Ringgenberg. I will try to put a couple of links into the description box below. Patrick, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.